Hey guys, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing well today. This video is going to be about my favorite art supplies from 2024. So I'm just going to jump right into it so you don't have to keep looking at this ugly background here. Okay, so naturally I'm going to start with pencils because that is my go-to of everything. My comfort zone, if you will. For sketching, I typically use two different types of sketching pencils. One being the Prismacolor in light blue, and I really like this because it's different than just the typical graphite color, and it just adds a little bit more interest when I'm sketching, so it makes me feel happier. So yeah, I definitely use this one a lot. The second one I would grab is my Blackwing matte pencil, and it does good as well. It's a soft tip, so it definitely dulls out pretty quickly, but otherwise I do enjoy it, and this would be another thing that I would grab for. Which leads us to my favorite pencils of all time for 2024. It would be the Faber-Castel Pitt graphite matte pencils, specifically the 2B, the 6B, and 10, and then naturally the 14, which, let me get a full one. So a 14B, as you can see, I use 14 a lot, so it needs to be replenished often. And I actually tend to buy these so frequently that I have a stash in my box right now for once these ones are all done. I think I've bought them about 3 times now, so these are definitely my favorite. Would highly recommend them if you do professional graphite drawings. Just an example, I mean, I did these with my graphite matte Faber-Castel pencils, and they still do have a little bit of a shine, if you can see that. They're not as matte as I would hope for them to be. However, they definitely do a lot better of a job than your typical other graphite pencils. So that's just an example of what they can do. And then my favorite erasers for my graphite drawings will be the Faber-Castel, I don't know what this is, but yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I think it does a good job. And then of course the Mono Zero eraser for those smaller details, and I usually just like cut the tops of it to make a point. And yeah, these two seem to work really, really well for me. A lot of people would recommend the kneaded erasers. I do use the kneaded erasers, however, they're definitely not my favorite because they don't lift as much as I would want them to. They are good for light lifts, of course, but I can do that with something easier like this as well. So these are definitely my top 2 erasers. I think my top would have to be the Staedtler, anyways, this guy. Even though it's not even really the best, it's the one I tend to reach for the most. I feel like my leads do break frequently in here, but this is something that I really grab for just because it's quiet. If I have no children in my house or I have the ability to make noise, I will grab my Derwent and this bad boy. I mean, it's hefty and it grinds, and you know, it takes a lot of, oh boy, I don't know how to put it back. There we go. Yeah, it takes a lot of effort to grab this guy out, so that's why I usually tend to go for this guy a lot more. But this one gets a really sharp point, so if I want that real sharp point, I will grab this guy. And pencil crayons, it has to be no other than the Prismacolor Premier pencil crayons. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about them. I mean, everyone loves them. They're pretty decent pricing, so that's what makes them really good. I would highly recommend those. And then to go along with that, for some sort of solvent, I do like to use the Prismacolor Premier blender. It's not always efficient for like big pieces, but for small pieces, this is something I would typically go for. I can also use this with my pencils, so I will do that as well sometimes. So this is also a good thing to have along with it. And then just as an example, like this is something that you can do with the Prismas. They're super soft, and this, I would have used this as well to do that soft getting rid of the grain. So yeah, just as an example, I actually did a tutorial with Kirsty, last name, it's failing me, Kirsty Partridge? Oh my goodness. Anyways, yeah, so she does really amazing realism when it comes to like everything. So definitely would recommend her. But yeah, the Prismacolors, I mean, what else to say? And then yeah, just like another example, like what you can do with the Prismacolors. They're super buttery, as people always say, that typical word. But yeah, like you can get some really, really nice stuff with Prismacolor pencils. I do hope to expand and use the polychromos and maybe Caran d'Ache, because I do have both of those as well. So I will see about maybe doing that more so in 2025 and doing like full pieces with those strictly and see what I think about those compared to these. But as for right now, these are always ones that I grab for. So, and then moving along to sketchbooks. The Artica sketchbook is probably my favorite from all the ones that I have used in the past. It holds it holds mediums pretty well. And I think, okay, yeah, so like this is just graphite, and it actually pulls graphite fairly decently. Like I could do many layers with this, and it would be like, you do need to have some sort of tooth with paper, and I'm really surprised at how well this actually like held up for that. And just as an example about the water, this is a watercolor piece that I did, and you know, it warps a little bit, but overall, like it's really not that bad. So I do enjoy this sketchbook for how cheap it is. Like I think it was like, I don't even know, like less than $30 for sure. I don't want to go too low, but I'd rather go a little higher than too low. But it was definitely around that. I want to say it was around 20. I could be wrong, but anyways, yeah, it's for the cheap side. I think it does a really good job for what it is. So for markers, I would say that my favorite is definitely the Ohuhu brand. I have the 48 set. I wish I had more. They're all kind of displayed there. But yeah, I do really, really like these markers. I think that I do have Copics as well, which if you've seen my previous video, I'll link it here if you haven't, where I test out Ohuhus versus Copic markers. And I don't know, I just think for the price of these, like you can't really beat it. They do bleed often, which is something that I don't love, but overall, I would just say for the price, these are definitely my top choices. And I grab for them very frequently. Moving along to wet mediums, I don't paint that often, but when I do, I typically will go for watercolors. Oh gosh, this palette is a mess. And my favorite watercolor brand is Daniel Smith. So I just have the tubes here as an example of what they look like. Yeah, I don't know. These are just like the nicest watercolors that I've used, and I really enjoy them. I think they're very vibrant, and like this palette is so bad right now, so I apologize for that. But an example of like kind of like brightness that you can get from it, like this is a sand piece that I did a while ago, and yeah, I just love the bright colors that it turns out. And I mean, this wasn't even the best paper too, so I really enjoy these watercolors. And yeah, I would definitely recommend Daniel Smith for more professional grade watercolors. And then when it comes to watercolor brushes, there's two that I typically always gravitate towards, and that's the Winsor Newton size 8 round and the Aqua Elite Princeton size 4 round. And they're very, very similar. It's just depending on which, like what piece I'm doing and the size. But yeah, these are two that I always end up going for. I do have a whole roll of brushes here, and I mean, I do use them, but yeah, I tend to find myself grabbing these ones if I'm doing something pretty quick. And you know, obviously I do need the hotkeys or however you say it, and like the big rounds for doing big washes, but I definitely find myself reaching for these two specifically. And talking about paper, so my favorite paper for graphite is definitely the Fabriano. This is the hot pressed cotton, 100% cotton. Yeah, and it's 140 pounds. This is definitely my go-to paper for graphite drawings. It just has that right amount of tooth that I can do decent layering with it. And yeah, there's not much else to say. And I don't actually use this for watercolor ever, so that's that. When I actually do watercolor pieces, the ones that I do tend to go for is the rough grain watercolor by Arches. And I've actually used quite a bit of this, but this is definitely one that I will go for when it comes to full watercolor pieces. And here's just an example. It does, you know, warp, but you can always fix that. Here's just an example of how rough the paper actually is. And this is a painting that I did a bit ago with the paper. So yeah, it's really, really textured. There's cat hair all over this. Anyways, so yeah, I really enjoy using this really rough textured paper for watercolors because I think it gives it a really nice look. I also really enjoy using the hot pressed Arches paper as well, just because it dries really fast. Yeah, the texture is very, very smooth and I really like that. And so here's just an example as well of watercolor on that paper. It does dry super fast, so you definitely want to get in those cat hair again. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so you definitely want to get in those colors down faster with hot press, but I don't know, I just like the outcome of it as well. I think it looks really good. And then just some fun little bonus entries. This is mainly for like markers and graphite, but I do use this fairly often, and this is to make sure I'm not smudging anything, or it's to put behind as a barrier as well. I think that's where I actually got this. This was a barrier for my coloring book that I received. So I do use that a lot with my graphite. As you can see, it's got graphite all over it. But yeah, I definitely use that. Then another special tool that I use is this Quo, it's actually a makeup brush, but I use this often to wipe away any like eraser bits or just extra like pencil crayon markings. What is that? Anyway, but yeah, it just helps wipe away so I don't do any smudging on my pieces of art. So I use that often. Definitely needs to be cleaned, but that's another good one. And then for blending as well, for not so typical blending ideas, I obviously use tissue and a Q-tip. So these are a lot of the things that I will grab when I'm blending as well. Q-tips really are good for smaller pieces and making it more smooth. Same with Kleenex. I think it helps a lot with blending skin particularly because it has a lot of a softer vibe to it. So these are just some extras that I will throw in the video because I think that they're really good to have on hand. And also I just want to throw these out there as well. They aren't my favorite, so I'm not going to list them as favorites, but they're just additionals until I find something better. These are for highlights that I usually use. The Posca, I don't mind the Posca. The only issue that I have with it is that it will fade on certain colors, and I want something that's super bright, and this doesn't always accomplish that. And the Jelly Roll, man, lots of people love these, and I don't get it. They are super streaky. They leave like that weird like trail. Yeah, they're not my favorite, but I still can't find a better alternative yet. So these are the two that I will grab, even though I'm not thrilled about the Jelly Roll particularly. But anyways, I just thought I would add those in there. So if anyone has an actual like good suggestion for me for getting some decent highlights, then please let me know in the comments below. And also I do want to mention my color cubes. I mean, obviously I have them both right there, but this is by Sarah Renee Clark, and I just love these. I use them fairly frequently compared to using like a color wheel when it comes to trying to arrange palettes. I've mentioned before, like picking colors specifically is very difficult for me, so I have definitely really enjoyed using the color cubes just to give some inspiration. I think they're really great. If you haven't checked out Sarah Renee Clark's channel or even her website, I definitely highly recommend it. So anyways, everybody, that is all of my favorite art supplies of 2024. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to give it a like and subscribe to my channel, I would absolutely love that. Anyway, guys, there you have it. These are all of my favorite art supplies of 2024. And I am super excited for my 2025 art haul video, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, I will see you all in the next video. Bye!